All right, we're live, and I'm here with Raul Garcia. Hi, Raul.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good.
Welcome
Thanks.
everybody.
This is fantastic. I'm so excited to have you join me today. I mean, it's been so long since you and I have had a chance to speak. We met so many years ago in Burbank, California, and so you are with us live from Singapore, correct?
Yes,
Yes, so
yes.
we are exactly 12 hours apart. So this is kind of interesting. It's a nice cozy evening over here, and it's a nice bright brisk morning for you.
Here I just woke up, so it's 8 a.m. So it's pretty good time to start.
Yeah, so good. Well, so would you do me a favor and just give a really quick description of maybe a little bit about your history and how you got started in working in art and animation, and just take people through that so that it can bring them up to speed.
Okay, well, basically, yeah, my name is Raul Garcia. I'm originally from Spain, and I've been working in animation for probably more than 35 years. I started really young. I started when I was like 19, and I started in Spain, a country that is not really well known by the animation industry or by the animation. And my dream was always like do animation for a living. I mean, when I was a kid, I was completely hypnotized by cartoons, and I used to see a lot of Warner Brothers and classic Looney Tunes, and of course Disney. So really, it was interesting, because I got that feeling very early in life, like when I was like 8 or so. I figured out the same way that some people wants to be a firemen or lawyers or nurses or whatever. I wanted to be those people who make cartoons for TV or for Disney, actually. So I was very aware that it was somewhere out there in the world there was someone who will dedicate their life to draw and making funny cartoons, and that's what I wanted to be. Unfortunately, when you know I was growing up in Spain, there was not any animation books available. There was not any schools or university where you could learn cartoons. So I went and studied filmmaking. That at the end of the day, it was pretty useful in terms of then doing what I will be ended up doing, and that's how really I start being interested with cartoons. In one point, there was a studio in Madrid who was basically picking up work from Hanna Barbera in the States, um, and I went to that studio and show my portfolio, show the little drawings that I have here and there, and somehow they hire me. I was pretending I knew something about animation, but in reality, I didn't really have much of a clue. But anyway, they went along, and I started working in shows like the revamp of the Flintstones or Smurfs and all that kind of a TV fare. Uh, and that was like the really first job that I ever had in animation, and it lasted like about 8 years, where I guess I learned everything they need to be known about TV animation and shortcuts and draw fast and have fun in the process. But deep down inside me, there was this thing of I really wanted to do is feature animation, and obviously feature animation if it's possible with Disney.
Hmm.
uh, so when I had the first chance to leave Spain and go looking for a place to animate, to do features, there was when in France, Studios Gaumont decided to do a series of feature films on Asterix, that is a very famous European comic book. And then again, I just took my suitcase, my drawings, went to Paris, figuring out that I wanted to work in a really feature animation, and and I was hired. I was hired in France, so I spent like 3 years in Paris working in Asterix films, and sometimes I compare my adventure with a little bit of the history of feature animation in the last 30 years. because I'm talking here about 1984 or so.
Mm.
There was the moment where Disney released a Black Cauldron, and after that was like the closing of the animation department in the studio. So basically, and again, worldwide, we were lucky. We have like 2 or 3 feature films released every year. Now we live in an embarrassment of richness or riches with 26, 30 animated feature film released every year. So now
Right.
it's heaven. Okay.
Yeah.
And in those days, it was very lucky. You had like a Disney re-release, or maybe the latest Disney, and then some weird animated movie from some obscure European country, or not even Japanese. You know, the Japanese films, they were not really released that often. No? So when I went to Paris to work in this on Asterix and Caesar Surprise and Asterix in Britain, I found myself that suddenly start working with a group of international artists. The few of them that they were willing to travel around doing feature quality animation,
Hmm.
and that put me in that like kind of like select club of animator gypsies that they will go around the world.
Animated gypsies.
Yeah, he was like half pencil will travel. When the film was over, obviously what happened is what is still happening in the animation industry. Someone got an idea, they get really happy because they're gonna make an animated film. They put together a crew. You work very hard for 2 years, 3 years, and then when the movie's over, the studio closed down, and there we go, looking for another gig.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So there's things that haven't really changed from all these 30 years of working in animation. So when the Asterix film finished, we were all kind of in the street trying to find what was next. And the what next was basically coming to Los Angeles and then later to Korea to work in a feature film.
Hmm.
That was actually the Chipmunk's Great Adventure,
Oh, okay. I remember that one.
the world famous singing squirrels
Yeah.
in glorious 2D.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and the fun part about that, it was like it's supposed to have been a very quick job in terms of hey, you come in here like 2 weeks in LA to learn the characters, and then you go to Korea to work for 3 months, where we have a mega crew of like a gazillion animators that will wipe up the whole thing in no time, and we will have a feature film done in a record time.
Nice.
Uh, and, and yeah, didn't quite work that way. And I stayed in Los Angeles a little bit more, and I ended up working in Korea about like 13 months. Okay. The the fun part about the project was that again, going back to history, the
Hmm.
fun part the project um, is that in that moment, 1986 probably, in that moment, obviously Disney had closed down. Don Bluth, who was the other mega film producer, director, contender, after doing American Tail, uh, had moved to Ireland. So there was not really animation industry or animation big studio in LA to speak to. So suddenly this was the only production that was available, and everybody was working there. I mean, that's where I met Glenn Keane, Rasul Jadani, David Prexman. I mean, even Chris Felucci. I mean, everybody who could hold a pencil was working in that production in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very interesting because suddenly I found myself working with Disney animators without really trying, and in that sense, I have to say that I learn animation. I mean, I've been self-taught. No? I learned myself animation by buying a very tattered copy of the Preston Blair animation
Oh,
and
right.
copy every single drawing and in between in every single drawing. So without a formal training, uh, I had kind of lived in a state of perpetual doubt about what I do, and that made me really hungry about learning from other people. So I was really absorbing all the knowledge of all these people that they had an amazing talent and work in this movie. So that was how somehow I ended up having a relation with Disney without really having a relation with Disney.
That makes sense.
So then when I finished the job in Korea, there we go again in terms of half pencil will travel. I mentioned Gypsy on the go. I wonder what I'm gonna do next, and obviously the next thing to do was going back to Madrid. Um, and this is a really funny story when kind of reality sometimes is weirder that you expect, and this kind of a uh, coincidence that make things happen. No? On the way back from Korea to Madrid, I had to go through LA, and at the airport, in one of those bookstores, I just bought a book to spend time in the plane, and the book I bought, it was like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I mean, Who Censured Roger Rabbit. And when I read that book in the plane, suddenly it was like, whoa, this could be a great movie. I mean, how come no one have discovered this interesting book? I mean, this is great.
No, wait a minute. Can I interrupt you here for a minute? Now, you said
Yeah.
that you found a Who Framed Roger Rabbit book?
Yes.
I wasn't aware that it was a book.
Yeah, I mean, Who Censured Roger Rabbit, the original novel that is the movie is based on.
I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and in this moment, I had to say that even if I keep telling everybody that I found it in the airport, I'm not sure if I found it in the airport or in one of those used book stores. But somehow, the main point is like I found Who Censured Roger Rabbit by Gary Walsh in the place and I read the book on the way to LA. So when I arrived to LA, I have a plane going LA, London, London, Madrid, and in the LA London leg of the trip, I bought some movie magazines to see what I was missing while I was away. And somewhere in the bottom of a page, I saw this like soon Disney and Amblin get together to work to make Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and hybrid animation movie directed by Richard Williams. And in that moment, my eyes went like every take, like
yeah.
Because for me, Richard Williams was one of those persons that really inspired me to do animation, and actually, one of the first times I went out of Spain, I went to London, and without knowing much English, I went to Richard Williams' studio, and they were like, knock, knock, knock. Hello, I am Raul. Me animator, me work, me good, you.
I like that you have a funny impression of yourself at that time.
Yeah. So somehow the Richard Williams people were extremely nice with me, and they parade me around the studio. They show me the studio. I think I met their Oscar Willow for the first time. And actually, when I left, they gave me a nice brochure saying the next wonderful animation movie ever once. 25 years later will be the Sisante Cobbler, no? But I mean, because I was like 16 or 17 at that time, But anyway, going back to the story, when I took that plane to go to London, then to go to Madrid, I never really got the chance to go to Madrid. I just stopped in London, went to Richard Williams again, but this time with some kind of like a demo reel or something to show, no? And I knocked the door, and again they were really nice with me, but it was one of the situations where we haven't started yet. No. Yeah, we're gonna start in one year or so. So don't call us, we call you.
No, good. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in Hollywood speak, don't call us, we call you is forget about it. But anyway, once I was in London, as I knew that the Don Bluth had opened a studio in Ireland, I just popped pop out and took a plane and went to Ireland to visit friends and to see how the thing went. And somehow I ended up being hired in Don Blues, where I started working in Land Before Time kind of right away.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize you'd worked for Don Bluth.
Yeah. It was one of the situations where, again, talking about films and people who really have an impact in your perception of animation and what you love to do. When I saw Secret Nim, again, I was blown up. I thought it was pretty amazing movie, and that the Don Bluth kind of kept the flame of classical animation. So I had to check for myself how was it, and I spent 9 months working at Don Bluth. That was pretty amazing because again, I once again the animation gypsies around the world kind of like concentrate in one place. uh, and I worked with really amazing people there. There was a great project to work. Really hard work. And 9 months later, basically, suddenly the phone rang, and there was a Disney saying, "Hey, we're starting. Are you coming here?" And I did one of those like Roadrunner Coyote thing, where suddenly there's a dust of cloud is left in the place where I used to be, and when in the first plane to work for Richard Williams,
And that was in England again.
that was in UK. That was in England, and that was like really the first my first contact with Disney in a professional way. So that was really cool. And when I arrived to Richard Williams, to the studio in Disney, that was pretty amazing. I mean, I never seen a most dedicated crew. I mean, basically when we started the project, no one had a clue.
Mm-hmm.
No one knew if what we were doing was going to work or not. So it was this energy in the air of working in something that has never been done before.
Right now, so that was an interesting time. Yeah, I can imagine that being very kind of nerve wracking with Roger Rabbit because it's such a distinct style. I really hadn't seen anything quite like that before.
Yeah. Okay. The good part is as part of working in the film, we had to do a lot of research. So we spent tons of time. I think I saw every single Looney Tune cartoon ever produced there. That come to think of is like, holy moly, they're paying me to watch cartoons all day.
Yeah, I would have done that for free.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it was really amazing working in that because suddenly, I mean, I was assigned to the crew who will do the final sequence where all the characters coming out of the Toontown.
Hmm.
So suddenly it's like, oh my dear, I'm going to work animating Mickey and Donald and Betty Boop
That
and
that 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 was the first work that you did on the movie. Was that
yeah,
shot?
yeah.
That must have been. That's a lot of work to begin with.
Oh yeah, I mean, it took me the whole movie to actually work. I mean, we were like a crew of 3 or 4 people. I mean, I remember Tom Zito was working in that sequence. Pete Wester was working in that sequence, and then Phil Niblin and Andreas Dia were working in the sequence, and we
Okay.
will divide the work because there were so many characters. So we had like work out a system to be able to do like first row, second row, third row background characters. And one of the interesting parts of it is when we started working in that sequence, Warner Brothers was not very convinced about giving the rights of their characters to, to an unknown project that no one knew what was about. No? So Warner got a deal with Disney to have in the movie Donald Duck and Mickey and Daffy and Bugs with little small print in the contract saying we let you use Bugs Bunny and Daffy, they have to have the same screen time that Donald and Mickey. And somehow that's why in the movie you have these two showpieces where uh, uh, Bugs and Mickey are together and they fall from the plane and that kind of stuff, and or the one with the Daffy and Donald piano duel thing.
That was pretty surreal to watch. And I remember being a kid watching
Yeah,
that movie in the theater, and there was something really neat about seeing Mickey with Bugs Bunny,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was the first time I remember seeing them combining. It kind of juxtaposed these two different worlds together.
Yeah. And that was interesting because then again in that sequence that I was working, the Toontown with all the characters coming up, what we had designed generic characters, generic cartoon characters like Coco the Clownish kind of design, or generic 40s character walking around. No? Then when Warner saw the first test of the movie and they start seeing the first shots composed and everything, then they change their mind and they say, okay, we give you all the stable of Warner Brothers cartoons to play with. So we have to change the animation of some of the stuff that we did with generic characters and add in the Warner Brother cartoons on the you know and sometimes being not very faithful to the period of time that we were that there was the in the movie, because like a character like the Coyote or the Roadrunner wasn't invented, that wasn't designed till much later. But anyway, suddenly we have all this wealth of characters. Then it was really funny because at the same time we had like Betty Boop, that's supposed to be a Paramount cartoon, but Paramount didn't really let the studios use Popeye or olive oil. So so
Mm-hmm.
so somehow we didn't have, and actually in the movie was in the script was a scene in when Marvin Acme Memorial, where Popeye and Brutus supposed to carry be the pallbearer, carry the coffin, that kind of stuff, and that was kind of a scratch out of the movie, mostly because probably length issues, but mostly because Paramount didn't really let them use the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah. And then, so how much longer after Roger Rabbit did you continue to work with Disney?
yeah. Well, again, in when Roger Rabbit finished, and again there was one of those productions when we worked like tremendous amount of hours, and no one really cares. Really, I mean, everybody was so incredible motivated to work that you were dragged out of the studio with this every day, thinking I can't wait for the next day to actually go to work.
Oh, that's
uh,
great.
it was so exciting, no? So when the movie was over, uh, again it was an Amblin Disney co-production. um, Suddenly the two studios found that they had an amazing studio in London, full of the best professionals that they could find everywhere worldwide. And you know there was something really interesting in terms of, we have created this, how this people, this organization and a studio that is first class. And then I guess they might have some kind of like problems there, because Disney wanted to keep the studio open, Amblin wanted to keep the studio open, but I guess they kind of like couldn't figure out who will get the studio. So
Mm.
they went and closed down the studio and laid everybody off.
So the solution was to close the studio. They couldn't
Yeah,
decide, so the studio
yeah,
closes. That's
yeah.
that's
No,
that's no.
and there was really funny slash sad thing, because one day I remember Jeffrey Katzenberg came to the studio and gave a really amazing speech, motivational speech. Everybody was like, yeah, no? And he say these famous words of, guys, don't worry, your future is assured.
Nah.
We're gonna we're gonna keep making films here, no? So over the weekend, suddenly people who had a bike decide to buy a car. People who had a girlfriend decide to propose. People who were married decide to have a children. People who rent a house decide to buy a house. Everything that it was a bright future ahead of us. And then next Monday we have the picnic sleep, and everybody kind of like
it was literally the next week.
pretty much.
So you heard Jeffrey Katzenberg say, "You're safe here," and then about a week later, everyone was laid off.
Yeah, a week, 2 weeks. I mean,
But
give
it
and
was
take.
it was so soon after. That's
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it was pretty soon after. Yeah.
So when you heard the news that the studio was closing, you thought it was a joke, no doubt. Like somebody's messing with me because we were just told that we would be able to stay here.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it, because at the same time it was like, this is so good to be true. I mean, I don't want the dream to end. And but no, yeah, everything closed down, and then again, I got left alone in London with my
With the
lonely,
pencil ready to travel.
very little travel. Lucky enough, in that moment was somehow a little bit renaissance of animation. Uh, and obviously, when as soon the Roger Rabbit movie was released, it was a big mega hit. Animation was back, uh, because again, one of the things with Roger Rabbit, it was produced in one moment where classical animation and classical cartoons were almost forgotten. Uh, we're threading here in Kerber's territory in an Iman on TV, so it was not really the best of times for hand-drawn animation. So when Roger Rabbit came out, it was such a revolution that everybody got interested in cartoons.
Well, I'm curious if, given the success of Roger Rabbit, I'm wondering if they had just held on a little longer with the studio, if what you would have sort of just kept going from that point, if they had just waited a little longer.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess that could have been one thing, but they didn't have anything lined up. So suddenly keeping such a crew, then doing nothing, I guess it was a very expensive prerogative.
I imagine it was expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that the point when you made a move to the States?
No, not yet. I mean, that was the point again when the Roger Rabbit fever hit and the world, and suddenly all the advertising companies, they wanted to do commercials with that technique. So somehow I ended up in London directing commercials using the technique of Roger Rabbit, mixing animation with live action. And we did big jobs for like Milton and Bradley, the Connect Four commercials, and some Burger King. So really high end kind of commercial with that technique. Okay.
Right.
That again, suddenly that was great, because then I made the transition from animator to director, and that was something absolutely cool.
Right.
Meanwhile, back in the ranch, back in Disney, after Roger Rabbit, that was when basically the moment where Casimir and Eisner decided to revive the animation division in Disney, and they went back to the States to work to prepare the Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and all these forthcoming new films that they were going to produce. And what happened is slowly Disney started calling the animators who work in Roger Rabbit and offering us going to the States to work.
Okay.
So in one point, I got that offer to actually go to the States, but again, remember, I'm from Spain and I need a work visa, and those things took time.
Right.
So basically, it took them like basically 2 years to sort out the legal paperwork to get me to Disney.
Okay. Now, when you got to Disney, what was the first project you worked on?
When I got to Disney, Beauty and the Beast was already underway, and I started working on Aladdin.
Okay.
I mean, I worked before with Eric Goldberg in London when he had his own studio, Pizzazz, and we were doing commercials there. And then Eric was called to go to Disney to work in the Genie, and then when I arrived, I was assigned to his crew. So that was great to work with an old friend and mentor. And for me, I think part of my success in the animation world is is thanks to Eric. I consider him a great friend and an amazing mentor. No?
Mm-hmm.
So I started working at Disney, working the Genie, and there was one of the things when I really started before proper production, so we had the time to play around with the characters and do stuff. And the weird part about that is like I was the first animator from Spain that was hired at Disney.
Oh, wow.
So suddenly it was this pressure that I put on myself in terms of like, oh, if
Oh,
I
you're
screw
representing the whole country.
yeah, if I screw up, this can close the door to any Spaniard that will try to come into the studio. No? And at the same time, all these years I've been working with the studios that more or less they're new, they're recently open, or there's not don't have a history behind. But suddenly you get thrown to the Disney studio, and it's not that you work in the Disney company doing animation, is that you work in a place where you have like 75 years of history, and where people have done the movies that mark your childhood, the movies that they're considered classics. And here you are, and you have to keep up with that. I mean, you have to somehow be there with Milk Hall and Frank and Ollie and Mark Kiman and all these guys. So I was frozen to death. Like the first week I was working there, it was like I felt the ghost of past animators, the ghost of Disney looming over my shoulder, say, "So, what you doing, man?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
with this feeling of waiting for the door to open, and someone coming to the door and coming to the room and say, "Who are you? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
You don't
Right.
belong here, man."
No, clearly you did. Clearly you did belong there. And not to jump ahead, but I'm very curious to get into some of your original work as well. That you because when I got to meet you, of course, it was quite a bit after that. It was it was 2007 that you and I met, and
Yeah.
so I'm curious as to when it was that you made that leap to work on original projects and including your Extraordinary Tales movie.
Okay, obviously, again, as someone who worked in animation, you cannot stop having ideas.
Hmm.
And all of us dream with this one day when I will make my own film.
Hmm.
So I keep having that feeling, and I keep filling up sketchbooks and any little piece of paper with ideas, with gags, with characters. With one day I will make a movie about this, but never really happened. And actually, when I was at Disney, there was at one point they were they have something called the Gong Show, where you could pitch ideas to be turned into animated films at Disney. So
Hmm.
I don't think I miss any Gong Show going there suggesting suggesting projects to the studio. Uh, they never picked any of my ideas, but anyway, it was a really interesting way to keep your creative juices flowing. And still, meanwhile, my drawer of ideas that one day I will do, it kept growing and growing and growing. Uh, and that was what in one point made me do that leap of faith and jump ship from Disney and start working in my own ideas, because there's one moment where you say, there's one moment in your creative life as an animator or as a director where you have to choose the two different paths, and it's kind of difficult to get them all together. I mean, whether you work in a big studio with a big corporation, where you have the 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 assurance that whatever you're going to work in is going to be seen by a lot of people and it's going to be probably a mega success, and with that comes, the money associated with having a steady paycheck and just not worrying about what is going to happen next. And you have the other path that is like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing in my own terms and see, as a personal challenge, see I can make it and see if I can actually keep going that way. And there's two paths that are completely opposite there. It's hard to have the two of them at the same time. And in that point, I make that decision and I stick with it. And here I am, probably 15 years after I left the bigger studios, still active and working and making movies. So
Yeah.
that was what happened. So and that happened after really working 10 years at Disney. Okay, so it took me. I mean, after Aladdin, I work in Beauty and the Beast a little bit in one sequence that was cut out of the movie and then came back 9 years later. But after Aladdin, I work in Pocahontas, in Lion King, Hercules, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Fantasia, who was my last film there. I mean, and Tarzan and Fantasia. The thing about Disney is that was in like the second golden age of animation somehow, and the way we used to work was, there was some movies where you start from the beginning, and you are part of the creative team that takes the movie from beginning to end. And there was another movies where you're just thrown to the trenches to help finish the film. So I keep combining, you know, Aladdin was beginning to end. And then I got thrown to Lion King to help finish the movie. Then I started Pocahontas beginning to end. Then I got thrown in Hunchback of Notre Dame to help finish the movie. Then I started Hercules beginning to end. So it went like some movies where the input was high in terms of getting involved with the movie, and some other movies where I was a workhorse in terms of helping the production move forward.
I see.
But it was really 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 interesting, and there was an amazing times there with all these creative people and all this amazing competition between all of us, trying to outdo each other. It was a really really nice time, and now looking back all my times in Disney, I have this horrible feeling that like when you're in front of some landscape of amazing beauty, and you feel that you're not opening the eyes wide enough to absorb everything. So I sometimes when I look in my life at Disney, I feel that I didn't open my eyes wide enough to absorb everything. No, that's not true. I mean, come on. I was like any other day in the animation research library, uh, taking all the scenes from Frank Canoli and Will Call, and kind of like, analyzing every single drawing, and I work super hard and get to know everybody in animation there. But then again, is this feeling of gee, I should have opened my eyes wider.
Well, I mean, that's a hindsight thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You can always find errors with things in the past and say, "Oh, I wish I had done that." But it sounds like you did. I mean, you got to work on so many amazing projects,
Yeah,
and of course, to young animators and people who are entering into the industry, that's a very inspiring
yeah,
progression. I mean, you get to work on just really a lot of the dream projects for a lot of people. Very
yeah. No, no,
different industry today. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, it was great. It was wonderful. Uh, so again, when I left Disney, kind of like the writing in the wall was there in terms of this is where the story ends. The movies start not doing very well, and CGI is coming our way. Toy Story was, there, being the mega big hit in animation, and suddenly the world of CGI was start going there and start being there, no, and being part of the filmmaking process. Uh, so in one point, I finished with Fantasia 2000, basically, where actually to be the last film I worked on, that was pretty amazing because basically I work in Beethoven's Fifth, and we were only like two animators in there, Big Wallman and myself, so we were let do whatever we wanted, and it was really fun. No? But in that point, I felt there was time to go, and I left the studio after Fantasia 2000. And again, I left the studio with this idea of opening my own studio or getting my projects together in a way that I could pitch them. And in theory, that's what I did. Step in that moment, again, the animation fever was really high. Every studio was producing animation. Uh, uh, New players came into the game, and suddenly, Turner Animation was doing stuff. Warner Bros. Was doing stuff. I mean, it was obscene the amount of work that was around town in that moment in terms of animation.
Right.
One of the fun things, and now it can be told, was that during that Disney period, there was so much freelance work around that a lot of us kind of like moonlight after Disney doing commercials and stuff like that. No? And and again, thanks to this renaissance on Disney animation, and thanks to Roger Rabbit, etc., etc., it was a movement of recognizing the all animators who toil in all these classic cartoons kind of anonymously. Uh, and I was fortunate enough that I got to know a lot of all animators from all the studios, from obviously Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnson, Ward Kimball, uh, Mark Davis from Disney, Irv Spencer from Paramount, Mike Law from Tex Avery, MGM. I mean, Art Babbitt. It was an amazing time because you got the chance to meet all these legends in animation, only known to animators. No? And then again, I got the chance to meet Mel Blanc and Fritz Freleng and Chuck Jones, and in one point I got the chance to work with Chuck Jones. Because Warner Brothers decided to do new new Merry Melodies, new cartoons, and they brought Chuck Jones out of retirement to direct these films, and somehow I got called to work with Chuck Jones. That for me was suddenly another dream come true. It's like my childhood hero, the guy, and I don't care if I'm under contract of Disney. I had to I had to work with Chuck Jones, no? So briefly, I was like moonlighting, working in Chuck Jones cartoons. I work in Chariot of Fur, the first Roadrunner and Coyote film after some time, and I work on another Frog Evening with Chuck, and he was an adorable guy. He was incredible. I used to go to his house, see all his old drawings from all these cartoons. For me, it was like so amazing. Again, it's like a dream come true. You have the chance not only to work in what you like, but to meet all your heroes.
Right. That must have been incredible.
Yeah. So yep.
Well, I just wanted to interrupt very quickly. Now, Raul, are you able to see the chat on the YouTube video? Can you see that visually? If you can't, I can read off it. I noticed that a question came in Spanish, and
Okay.
I unfortunately can't read it. But it looks like he posted a second question in English.
All right.
And so I just want to jump in here. Rinaldo says, hello, Rinaldo. And he says, I'm a junior 3D animator. Can you recommend me how to enter the industry? How can I improve my portfolio?
Uh-huh.
Hello, Rinaldo. And he says, I'm a junior 3D animator. Can you recommend me how to enter the industry? How can I improve my portfolio?
I guess it's a question of...
Just just so you know, if you can just drag the volume slider down on the YouTube video there, just so it doesn't double up on us.
Hello.
Are you there?
I'm something happened.
Oh,
Yes, I'm.
I think
Okay.
we're still here. It's just that we doubled up a little bit on the. I think because it was playing the audio from the YouTube video.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, it's been a technical mishap here. No, I mean, in general, being 2D artist, being 3D artist, the best way is, is study animation, observe life, study animation, not only what has been done before, but I would say expand your knowledge in seeing live action movies, in going to the theater and experience life. Uh, because in reality, animation is all about observation, and it's also about reproducing, making making actions believable, and making way that however a character move is because the character is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to make the motion, the movement of the character, the result of a mental process of the character going, doing something, feeling something, acting about something. The problem with the when I get asked that the how to improve, um, usually when you start animation, you start doing very basic exercises, and at the end, everybody kind of submit the same thing: the bouncing ball here, the pushing and the pulling, etc., etc. Try to go beyond that and try to do something a bit more creative, uh, because that will make a whole difference. A really great idea is like taking some dialogues for some movie and just recreated in animation, trying to find new styles of acting, trying to find the character moving a different way. So that will be a good way to keep going. And then whether you are 2D, 3D, draw, go to live drawing. Those things are very important, and it's the foundation. Once you obviously knowing the basics of animation, the principles of animation works wonders. I mean, it's something very important that whether you are 2D, 3D, stop motion, whatever you do in animation, is interesting to get to know them in depth. I think that would be a good thing. And again, is animation is something about passion mostly, but it's something about practice as well. Uh, you cannot really separate one from the other. It's hard work. uh, we try to make it effortless, but behind every line is a lot of work. Chuck Jones used to say that in order to become an animator, and a good draftsman, you have to get rid of about 20,000 bad drawings that you have inside. So probably in CGI animation, the thing will apply the same way, in terms that you have to get rid of 20,000 bad shots before you do that.
It's funny because that number changes all the time depending on who you're talking to. It's always 20,000, 50,000, 1,000. I think people change depending on their talent.
yeah, probably. For me, man, must be like a million.
I don't think so. I know your drawings are beautiful, and you know it. So yeah, Reynaldo, I hope that answered your question. And just so people know, feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will pass them on to Raul. And if you have any questions for me as well, I'll do my best to answer. So Raul, to get back on track, and I think we were getting to how you were beginning to adapt some of your personal projects, and I know that we eventually got to Extraordinary Tales, and I'm very curious as to how you chose that project. What was the genesis of it?
The genesis of it goes back very, very back when I was a teenager, basically. Again, I have a big passion for Edgar Allan Poe, maybe because it was like the first serious book that I ever read in my life. I mean, I went from comic books and young readings to read Extraordinary Tales when I was about 12. You know, so suddenly going from the normal young reader books to something that hard, I guess that kind of like serious damage my brain forever. So that was one thing, and thanks to Extraordinary Tales, suddenly my world opened to Lovecraft and to Lord of the Rings and to science fiction and to all kind of stuff, including horror comic books and etc. etc. You know? And the other thing that make me feel that animation was something more than funny cartoons was actually when I saw the UPA version of the Telltale Heart, okay, by Ted Parmalee, and that was like mind blowing in terms like again because they were and somehow everything happened at the same time. So with 12, 13 years old, like I was exposed to a horror film made in animation and Edgar Allan Poe and an adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe, so that stayed in my brain forever. And I kept inside this idea of animation is a technique, is not a genre. Animation is something more than funny cartoons, and I love funny cartoons to death. And I mean, I'm the first one who I have Saint Tex Avery there in my in my little corner with candles and everything. So so, so for me, cartoony animation is very important. But then that movie, The Telltale Heart, made me realize that there's something else that you can do with animation. So that one thing. Then, meanwhile, again, I was an avid comic book reader. I tend to read everything in a comic book, and there was one author that I really loved. There was a Uruguayan Argentinian artist called Alberto Breccia, you know? And he did an adaptation of the Telltale Heart in comic that blew me away. Yeah. So when and I got the chance to meet him when he was alive, and I talked to him. I would love to adapt your story to animation. But then again, I'm talking when I was like 17, 18, something like that, and I didn't have a clue at all, nothing, zero. So I had to wait all these years to actually being able to make my dream a reality, and that little short haunt me forever trying to make it.
Right. And so you you then decided to make it into a feature film, or were you going to do kind of a short?
Yeah, no, that was kind of an accident. Okay, what happened? I mean, following the timeline here, uh, uh, what happened is once I left Disney, I was ready to jump into doing my own stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and suddenly they called me from Paramount. Klasky Chupo was doing adaptations of TV series into animated features. Okay, and they called me to see if I wanted to work in this movie. There was the Rugrats in Paris. That it was basically an adaptation of this TV series, and I was hired as a sequence director. There was something completely different and new in my career, and of course I jumped into the opportunity, and I stayed with them like 3 or 4 years doing uh, doing first the Rugrats in Paris, then the White Summer movie, and in the middle something very interesting happened. They called me from this studio in Dallas to help with the storyboard and with the story in a movie called Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. That it was one of the few movies that were done in CGI in that moment. So I kind of jumped into the chance to do that and went to Dallas and worked in there like 6 months or so, helping out with the movie. And that was like my first taste of CGI in animation.
Okay.
Okay. So after that adventure is when I decide to to completely leave the the industry and venture myself in the world of self producing my own movies, or at least putting together different projects. And that way I ended up working in several projects that went nowhere very fast. I mean, mostly because when you go around town pitching your ideas, you always have this thing where you know whoever you pitch to, they go into this. I love your stuff. Your stuff is wonderful. You're amazing. But I have this great idea for a movie, and then they proceed. Instead of you pitching to someone, someone is pitching you.
Yeah.
And that happened to me in several occasions where and when that happened, whether you take the chance to do something or you just run away, it depends on the quality of the idea. But I took the chance and worked in a project for like a couple years, and that went nowhere because at the end we didn't have the producer didn't have the finance. and and then I decided, okay, well, I guess I will forget about other people's ideas and concentrate in mine. No? And again, by pure chance, in that moment, um, that was when I started doing this extraordinary tales. And what happened is, when I was making that film that went nowhere, okay, I met a producer who wanted to be co-producer of that movie, Stefan Rolands from Luxembourg, from Studio 352. No, um, he never got any deal out of the producers in terms of helping with the film or making something with me, but we like each other, and we decided that one day we wanted to work uh, with each other. So so in that point, because this movie crash and burn major way, I was so depressed that Roland Stefan talked to me and say, look, we get along very well. Do you have any other projects that we can work together? Let's figure out what we can do together. And I had this Telltale Heart uh, story in my drawer. Show it to him. He was another Edgar Allan Poe nerd, and we decided we will co-produce this first film, Telltale Heart, as a short film. Uh, at that time, I was very lucky that I found an unknown recording of Bela Lugosi reading the Telltale Heart, and I put an animatic together, and the match was so perfect that I used that recording of Bela Lugosi that I had to restore as this soundtrack of the film, as the title of the film, and we ended up making the film. To, Together with another studio in Spain called Candor Graphics. That there was an up and coming studio who really wanted to be in animation, doing feature films. So we decided to partner together, and I became part of Candor Graphics as a partner. And between the studio in Granada in Spain, uh, the studio in Luxembourg, and myself in Los Angeles, we made this film, Telltale Heart, that ended up being just a short who went around in the festival circuit, and we won like 45 awards with the film, and that triggered the idea with Luxembourg of saying, this could be a feature. We could do a feature film based on Edgar Allan Poe Edgar Allan Poe stories. So we put the thing together. We start pitching around to see if we find some finance, and no one wanted to touch a feature film, a feature animated film that will be a horror film. But somehow we found that it was kind of easy to produce and finance a short film as a short film. So we kind of like decide, okay, let's divide the feature in different segments. That every segment will be a short film. So that way we keep doing short films, and if we manage to get the whole thing, we will get a feature. If we manage to do only three, we will get a straight to video. If we manage to get only two, we just go around festivals, and that's how the whole thing rolled. At the end, we ended up, making the film in 9 years.
Right. Okay.
And then we made it.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
just so people know now, what is the best way that people can find this film? Because I know it's still on Netflix, right? But you can also find it. You can get DVD. Why don't you let people know where they can find it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for the moment, it's in Netflix USA. Okay. In Spain, you can find it in Movistar Plus. Oh, I guess you can. And then you can find it in DVD, Blu-ray, and Amazon.com. And in what point it was in iTunes, but I'm not sure if it's still there. Because again, the main problem when you produce and you make an independent film is not making the film. I mean, making the film is really hard, but at the end ended up being the easiest part.
What's the part you have the most control over, right?
Yeah, exactly. Once you finish the film, then it goes in the hands of sales agents and distributors and this and that, and then you lose control of what you can do with the film. So you're in their hands, and sometimes the film is wide release, and sometimes the film is relegated to just doing festival circuit, or sometimes a thousand million things can happen. The main problem that you face is like no one knows that you made a film. You have to go. I mean, even the film with Netflix is not something that they advertise. I mean, sometimes about Halloween time, the film pop up there in recommended, but mostly it's like I make a film based in Netflix, and you just tell.
Yeah, and just so people know, I will put the links to these in the description as well, so you can click those once the video is over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, and I really recommend watching it. Now, I remember when I first met you. Yeah, I think you had just begun work or had just completed the Edgar Allan or the Telltale Heart short, which it was the first, right? And I think it was in an animatic phase at that time.
Probably.
Yeah, that was really neat to see. It was exciting to see, because I had just moved to Los Angeles. It was a new world, and it was very interesting to connect with people like yourself who were doing independent works like that. Because, as you say, everybody has something that they want to work on, and they'll, especially in that area, you talk with people, and everybody will pitch you their idea as well. That's interesting. And in fact, it was funny because when we first connected, I had learned about your work, and I was anxious to tell you about my ideas. So even between us, that was a funny thing that happened. But it's very inspirational, to connect with people who have that sort. They're turning self-motivated dreams into reality. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of work, and of course, you have to give yourself, some kind of build a wall of invulnerability. Oh dear, my English. you have to really have like a bulletproof vest there.
Oh yeah.
To counter rest the all the critiques and all the Hollywood kind of like politics that is there.
Yeah, and I often say that if you keep centered on a goal, I use this all the time. I think I've probably said it 20 times in the past 2 weeks in various ones of these streams. But basically, if you have a goal that you want to reach, the desire to reach the goal is just the bar is a little bit longer than the pain.
Yeah.
If the pain goes to here, as long as the goal goes here, you'll do it.
Yeah, I agree.
But at a certain point, if it shifts like this, you start losing the reason, the motivation for why you're doing it in the first place. So to make sure you have that motivation, that reason, it has to be made at all costs. It will power you through all of that unattractive dilemma that you run into during development.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because previous to the Extraordinary Tales, the movie that we made in Spain was the Missing Links. And the way that movie came out, it was kind of it was like a miracle. I mean, it was kind of incredible. We got this studio in Granada with the most amazing crew that you ever dreamed, you know? and and we started working in the movie almost like an accident, trying to find ways to 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 make films. And we got this opportunity to make this film, and we kind of run with it with no money at all. And what happened is, uh, along the adventure of trying to get the finances of the film, Antonio Banderas came on board.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Antonio Banderas came on board was because, Antonio Banderas came to America, came to Los Angeles a year before I did. Okay. And I used to know him before from Spain, obviously. Uh, and here in LA, I used to, uh, see him in social occasions and in Hollywood gatherings and this kind of thing. And he was always saying, "Hey, one day maybe we will do something together." But obviously he's a live action actor, and for him animation it was then something very alien. Uh, but everything changes when he started working with DreamWorks in Puss in Boots, in Shrek. And suddenly for him, Shrek kind of opened his vision of animation. He started understanding. He understood what was animation and what was involved, etc., etc. So in one of those, what are you doing? Okay, what projects are you working? I told him, I'm working in this thing with this studio in Granada. You should see it. And the day after, I went to his house with the little 5 minutes of film that we had, and he saw it and he said, "Wow, this is great. I mean, I love it. Let me know how can I help you. Let me know. I want to be part of it." And that's when we actually partner with Antonio Banderas, and partnering with him is really easy. All the financing thing, even if again making the film, it was kind of hard in terms of where to find the money. The Spanish government, we got grants from the Andalusian government, but one of the brave things that we did, completely full crazy, is like, basically we went to the American film market, and to Cannes and to the Berlinale, and we started doing pre-sales of the movie. So pre-selling is like basically selling air. You get people to buy a movie that is not even made. But somehow, thanks to that pre-sale money, we were able to kickstart the project and moving forward. Without that, we will still waiting. So there was like a miracle that we uh, we work in the film, and the film was co-written and co-directed with Manuel Sicilia, who was the head of the studio in Granada. So it was an interesting combination of talents going on here. We actually finished the film, and the film was released on Christmas Day in 2008 or something like that. No, and Christmas Day in animation means that your film goes out, but at the same time, Disney, Warner, Sony, DreamWorks, they all have their films out for the holidays.
Right.
So in one moment when we thought that the movies were going to be by themselves, suddenly the movies is being released, and suddenly Disney has Bolt there, and DreamWorks have Madagascar 2, and Sony had something else, and Tales of Despero. I mean, there were like a million animated movies in the market in Christmas time when we released. No? So we went to the premiere of the film in Madrid, and suddenly we arrived to the movie theater, and the whole facade of the movie theater, the whole front of the movie theater, is a humongous poster of Madagascar 2, I think it was. And then we enter the multiplex to go to our premiere, and in our left side there's a gigantic standee of Bolt, covering like almost floor to ceiling. And then in one corner there is our little poster of the missing links there. So it was like really bizarre, really strange, and somehow we survived. I mean, we went through the Christmas season, and the movie was there. We won the Goya Award for Best Animated Film there, and the movie was
Wonderful.
there. So at the end they were like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and congratulations. Yeah, it's a great film. Yeah, I remember seeing it. Yeah, it must have been back in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, again, I never will be thankful enough to all the crew and all the people who work in it, because they again, there was another project where everybody really believed in the project, and there was this passion of, we're gonna do something great.
Right, right.
So between that, it's been a good run, in terms of project that I've been working. If you compare with a big studio, that a big studio is they do like one movie a year, two movies a year, and I'm doing here one movie every 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but what's interesting is again, kind of like I suggested earlier. If you look
Yeah.
at the grand scheme of everything that you've accomplished, it's amazing to hear you talk about how you're sort of like as you put it, the animator gypsy,
Yeah.
because you have 15 wonderful features under your belt,
Mhm.
that you've worked on. So that's pretty amazing, and quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Again, one of the problems in my life is that I love what I do too much, and my work is my passion and is my hobby as well.
Mhm.
So basically, when I don't have anything to do professionally speaking, I dedicate my life to do animation projects, other animation crazy projects here and there.
Right, right, but that's good, and it's how we get to see more great work. So
Yeah.
speaking of that, now I don't want to ask you to speak of anything that you can't talk about, but I'm curious, what are some current future plans? What sort of things might you be working toward? What are some aspirations on your part?
Well, I still have like 3 or 4 projects that I keep juggling, and again, the main problem is I don't have a big studio behind, so I don't have an unlimited funding to develop my projects further. So it depends how the market is. I work in a couple of them. Every 3 or 4 years I go in around the studios to feel the pulse of what they need and what they want, and they come back and fix things and change things. And some of the projects, they're in the drawer of one day. Some of the projects are more current in terms of this could happen. Um, One of the latest things that I've been working is a project that I hope one day will see the light. Is called Bitten, and it's an adaptation of a Cornelia Funke novel.
Oh, Bitten. I have your
Yeah,
book.
yeah, that one.
That's right. I have it here somewhere. Wait a minute. Let me find this book. Yeah, yeah. I've got it here. Yeah, yeah. But please go ahead while I look for it.
Yeah, this is a project that I will really like to happen. And the problem is, again, is one of those things where the financial is going crazy. So we have reached a couple points where the movie was about to happen, and then the whole thing fell down, and then we build up another way to make it, and then the whole thing kind of stalled. So it's been started and stopping quite a lot.
Yes.
And
Now, go ahead.
what we did is that's why you have that book there. Is like in one point we decide, okay, let's try to generate some interest in the book and in the movie. So let's make an art book of a movie that was never made.
Oh,
uh,
right.
so,
Okay.
so we made this book, the art book of Bitten, with the idea of having something more tangible and solid to present to producers.
Right, and it's beautiful. And in fact, I actually have two copies of
Ah,
of Pittman. Yes, a funny thing is, at a certain point in time,
yeah.
I was reaching out to publishers for my Dreamside project, which is
Oh yeah.
my personal work that is going to be released after the ukulele book. But one publisher I was talking to at one point was Magnetic, And so I was acquiring magnetic books. But yeah, this was a treat to see, and it is interesting to hear the foundation. And somehow amazingly, it didn't even occur to me that this
The
was
me.
my friend Raul. I didn't even know, because I had known Francisco Herrera, right? Is the right Francisco?
Yeah, Francisco. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He's
and
a great guy, and he did all the character design of the book. And the thing is, when we decided to put our names, it was like I'm not just like Raul, no Garcia, but Francisco is known as Herrera. So
right,
suddenly we put Raul Herrera was like a complete name. So it's like, okay, we put
right.
our names.
Well, this book is very, very cool, and I do love these character designs.
Yeah, I
This
would love to be able to make this film
is
once.
not the
Uh,
best way to demonstrate this, but for folks who might be curious, check it out. I have 2 copies, so you can buy one. So we have yeah, I saw this, and it was a total surprise. Again, this is a funny. I'm hitting my microphone, so sorry about that. But yeah, it really, really beautiful style, and the concept, right, is it's about sort of a werewolf
yeah,
concept, right? Right.
I
Yeah.
mean the novel that is based on the name of the title of the novel is called Young Werewolf. So the
Young
title
werewolf.
basically. And
Right.
what
Right.
happened is while we were making the all this development, we decided, okay, you know, to spark interest, let's see how this thing will look as a graphic novel. So
Right.
so Francisco and myself, we put together uh, these uh, 5 pages of the graphic novel just to see, how will be the final visual of the film.
Right. So this is the graphic novel section here.
And we put together this book for San Diego Comic Con,
Right.
and I think we print like 2,500 or something like that, and
Right.
and complete sold out. And thanks to that, again, we were approached for in free comic book day to do like a 12 pages little mini comic that will be given free to people in comic book shops.
Right.
uh,
Right.
we did a little mini 12 pages comic book to
Yeah.
give away, uh,
Right.
that basically proof that the idea is there and it can really work as a film.
Right. Now
So
this is one that you would like to adapt into a film.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm curious. This is a. I'm sure you've considered this, but have you considered just doing a full graphic novel?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. In one point, we were going to do it, and again, the problem is to do a full graphic novel. It will take you a minimum of 1 year or 2 years to make it.
Right. As I found out, yes.
Yeah, with this level of quality, and
Right.
obviously, again, life take you different places, and
Right.
suddenly Francisco got really busy. I got really busy. Rizzo moved to Spain to work in comics, uh, and suddenly we went different ways, and it's been really hard to concentrate the workforce that is needed to put it together.
Right, right. Well, see, this is now. See, this is why you're connected with Dave, because we should figure out a way to finish this. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah,
Yes.
yes. Do a graphic novel. We could publish it.
Yeah.
We this new model that we're doing with Kickstarter now. For those of you who are watching who might not be aware, although if you're on my channel, you probably are, is that I have a Kickstarter happening right now, which is for it's a project called Ukulele and the Crecklestone. And
Mhm.
in general, I think Kickstarter is not necessarily just Kickstarter, but crowdfunding in general. You brought up earlier that it's almost like selling air in a way, because it is a pre-order for something. Now, luckily, Ukulele does exist. It's nearly finished. But what's great about these platforms, it's not Kickstarter doesn't excite me so much for all the standard reasons. It's
Mhm.
exciting to me because it's a way for an independent creator to sell something directly to a fan base that might be interested, and it's kind of old school in that sense. You could sell a book like this and not have to worry about selling as many copies as you would through a mainstream publisher, because there's so much more there's so much less money that is being spent on retail wholesale costs and distribution fees and all of that. And so
Yeah.
the idea of being able to put something together uh, uh, alone, when you think about this, when I hear you say you printed 2,500,
Mhm.
that there's that's you don't have to really sell many more copies than that if
Yeah.
you're working on a direct sale system. And a Kickstarter is not a direct. Sorry to use these industry terms, but but that's really kind of what it is. It just simply means it's old school. We make something, we sell it to you, and if you're interested, we you buy the book for 25-30, and aside from our expenses to produce the book, aside from the taxes and fees, then that's money that we get to make and pour into our developments.
Yeah.
So, I would love to see something like this. When I first saw Bitten, I mean, I would buy this in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Well, I did. So, yeah, I'd love to see it turn into a longer form.
Well,
I
yeah.
actually, I actually remember getting it and thinking, and take this as the compliment it's intended to be. But I remember opening it and thinking, "Ooh, I can't wait to read this Bitten graphic novel." And then I thought, "Oh, it only has 5 pages." But
I know.
I wanted to see the full thing, and
Yeah.
and of course, doing a full-fledged graphic novel is actually does seem to be a sensible way to create more interest in a film production, if that is a desire.
Yeah, definitely that was the idea. And basically for us, it help us understand that there's an audience for this film. I mean,
Right.
sometimes one of the main problems when you create something, you always in that cloud of I wonder if this is interesting for someone else that me and my mom. Uh,
Well, I mean, it depends on how many copies your mom is willing to buy. If, for example, she will buy 2,500 copies, then you're set.
Yeah, exactly. Correct. So putting out these books, or another thing I usually used to do with my projects is in Europe there's something called cartoon movie that is an event that is put every year where for 3 days producers, exhibitors, distributors get together and you get the chance to pitch your ideas in there, and that will translate into pre-sales, into co-productions, into financing of different projects, and Starry Tales, uh, the missing links, Bitten, they've been there in the cartoon movie being pitched. And that will give you the gauge of where the market is and if your ideas have any traction or any interest. And,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe at the end, I mean, at the end might or might not work out, but basically it's a very good system to figure out if what you're doing is worth to keep going. And
Sure.
sometimes I've gone there. I went there once with one project that it was like flatline. I mean, no one really cared, and then you realize, okay, maybe this is not the thing we
Mm-hmm.
should do.
Yeah, but this is really fantastic, and maybe it's just me, but there's something, I do tend to love projects that are very colorful and have a. I especially do like when someone can do a really good macabre concept that's also very colorful and child friendly, and it just really seemed to be. So this would be wonderful to see. I'd love to see that just to become a graphic novel. It really would be wonderful.
I'm still. I mean, the if that helped, the script for the graphic novel is written.
Oh, good, good, okay,
So we do have a script, and it's a question of trying to figure out how to put it together. Because
right.
again, it takes like a year or so. With the ukulele, how long it took you, and
Oh,
where
it
are
was
you?
a long time. Yeah, it will be 2.5 years actually in total. However, now to be fair, that production time included an awful lot of conceptual development and legal work that had to be done.
Yeah,
I think that if we, and that was a 120-page book too as well. So if it was, say, a 96-page book or even a 64-page book, if it wasn't too long, that's
yeah,
something I think I could produce in about a year's time. So I don't think it necessarily has to stretch quite as long as two and
yeah.
a half years.
No, I mean it's funny because in one point, uh, going back to Extraordinary Tales, I do have a graphic novel based on the film from for the Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, great.
Uh,
Okay.
a 56 pages graphic novel using the artwork of the film.
Oh,
and
oh, clever. Okay.
yeah, and that actually with a publisher that will be published in some point probably next year. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, because you had used a very graphic style for the film, a very
yeah,
unique style for that.
yeah,
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 that I remember watching it, thinking that because every film has its own style,
yeah,
right? And so that inevitably, I thought, I think I remember seeing them like, oh, this is just naturally transitioned into a comic. You would hardly have to do any work.
yeah. I mean, again, that was a creative decision to keep the thing going. I mean, to keep myself. I mean, I in every segment, every short story, I put myself different challenges to go through, just to make it interesting for myself. Because again, it's really hard to maintain the passion in a project for 9 years.
Yes, yes, of course, yes, yeah,
So
yeah. So yeah, but this is the one right here. This is fantastic. Yes,
yes, thank you.
bitten, 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 bitten. Yes, yes.
I hope
I loved it. I loved it so much. I bought two. So yes, we need to make a bitten.
yes.
Yes. So there we go. And so yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. We're coming up on about an hour and a half, and I'm wondering if there's anything else you can think that you'd like to discuss before we start to close it down.
No, I just will say to everybody who's looking at this great podcast slash streaming slash live YouTube that they should run to Kickstarter and start helping you with your project,
All
because
right.
what you're doing is pretty amazing, and I'm learning a lot from you. And obviously later on, I want to pick your brain, because this Kickstarter thing is a really good system to get your ideas being a reality, and
Yes.
you've been pretty amazing in maintaining uh, your passion to actually make the things that you love to do, because at the end it comes back to that. I mean, we make these things because we love to do what we do,
That's right.
and you have this urge inside you of telling a story, making a film, making a comic book, making a graphic novel, and that had to come out somehow. And unfortunately, the industry sometimes is not receptive as this kind of more creative works, and those works need to be seen. And I
Well,
think,
and I appreciate you saying that, but I also, just to amend to that, something that made ukulele even more challenging in that regard was uh, uh, ukulele is even on its own, since it's in partnership with a video game.
mhm,
It itself has a fan base, and it still is a struggle to get the eyes on the graphic novel to
yeah,
a degree. I mean, we are now 100% funded and climbing, which is great. But
mhm,
the truth is, it's so expensive to produce these projects that even a successful Kickstarter really just sort of pays for the printing and the you still have the worry of paying bills and
yeah,
covering those expenses. So it really is a challenge. But you go a step further from that, and you get things like Dreamside, which is my original intellectual property, and that's much closer to what you're talking about, where you create something that's all your own, and that's it's hard enough just to take something that's popular
yeah.
or even semi-popular and turning it into a success. It's so much harder to make something original. And
So
so there,
how that one goes?
yeah, yeah. Well,
How,
so
where are you in that project?
with Dreamside,
Yeah,
well,
side.
there are three total books, and the first is finished, and
Uh-huh.
we're going to be doing probably another crowdfund next year, because I kind of like the system. I like the system. I like to be able to do just to sort of do a direct sale
Yeah.
for each project. And the reason that I delayed it was because I thought it made a lot more sense to put a project like Ukulele in front of it, which has an audience already.
Yeah.
Because I had tried very hard to build an audience for Dreamside for 2 years, and it was
Yeah.
really not happening.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I remember you were putting stuff online, and it was like little installments.
That's right. Yeah, and it's fun to do, but there's a certain point when you have to say, how can I build an audience? And you just have to try some things. There's no guaranteed way to do it. But
Yeah.
I think that ukulele's got the ball rolling, and so I'm excited to, and Dreamside's ready to go. So there's no work that has to be done on it. So that can happen as soon as I send books out for Yuka. I'm going to start turning my attention to getting Dreamside out finally, and then we'll see how that project does. And depending on its reception, I'll know whether or not I jump right into the sequel books, which are actually, it's not so much a sequel as it is one story broken up into 3 books.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I'm trying to get more books going for the what I call the Game Legends series, which is adapting video game properties like Yucca into graphic novels. But I really want to branch out. I just want to get so much going on, and in order to do it, I have to work with other people, you know. And so seeing things like this, like Bitten, it just gets me so excited. I love this sort of independent development, and I think the more that it can be put under an umbrella where we can sort of help each other out, and the better chance I think we'll have of building that audience.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I'll tell you what. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This is a blast, and it's of course, or today, this morning for Raul, since he is 12 hours beyond me here. So thank you so much for coming, spending the time with us. This has been a fascinating lesson in the history of Raul's experience, learning about the projects that he's had a chance to work on, which are far more numerous than I was aware. And so, yeah, that's been very impressive, and obviously is a source of inspiration for young artists and animators who want to break into this challenging industry that is now bigger than ever, right? There's more stuff than ever made, as you said. And finally, thank Raul for taking the time to speak with us today. Raul, is there any place that you would like to direct people so that they can find you and find more information about what you're doing?
Basically, I'm not very active on social media, so the only thing I have is my little Facebook portrait, and that's about it. But
Okay, cool.
Chances are that pretty soon I will have like a proper web page or something where people can actually check my stuff.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have to do this again as well, and so maybe at that point we'll share that social media information or your website as well, and people can find you. So I'll just assume that the next thing that's happening with Raul is a full graphic novel of Bitten. You heard it here first. Bitten coming soon as a full graphic novel, right, Raul?
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right. Thanks for taking the time. And bye, everybody.
And it's been a really pleasure to talk with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.